Hey there, tech enthusiasts. Welcome back to Best Consumer, your go-to source for everything cutting-edge in the world of technology. Whether you're a gadget guru, a tech-savvy pro, or just someone who loves staying ahead of the curve, you're in for a treat today. In this video, we're taking an in-depth look at the 5 best DSLR cameras that are making waves in 2025. From groundbreaking features to unbeatable performance, these devices are the ones to watch this year. I'll be breaking down what makes each one a must-have, whether you're upgrading your tech arsenal or just curious about what's out there. So, if you're ready to explore the top picks and see which 5 best DSLR cameras in 2025 is right for you, stick around, because you won't want to miss this. Let's dive into the best of the best in 2025 and find out which ones are worth your attention. Number 5. Canon D7500. The D7500 was premium, enthusiast-level DSLR that borrowed a lot from what was then Nikon's flagship DX format camera, the Nikon D500. It sat below the latter and above the D7200, which has now been discontinued. So what does it still bring to the table? Well, the D7500 remains a fine choice for shooting sports and action, thanks to its 8 frames per second burst shooting and generous buffer, impressively for an enthusiast-level DSLR of its time. It also shoots 4K video at 30 frames per second, and with weather sealing and chunky handling, DSLR fans will right at home with the D7500's reassuringly weighty frame. Of course, there are also excellent mirrorless cameras available for the D7500's new price tag, including the new Nikon Z50. But if it's the handling, battery life, and optical viewfinder of a DSLR you're looking for, then the D7500 now offers excellent value for money. One of the biggest shakeups the Nikon D7500 brought was its change of sensor. While both the D7100 and D7200 sported 24MP chips, as, for that matter, did the entry-level D3400 and D5600, here Nikon opted to use the slightly lower resolution 20.9MP sensor from the D500, which, as in that camera, is teamed with Nikon's X5 image processor. Number 4. Canon EOS 90D. The Canon EOS 80D was one of the best cameras around for anyone who needed a mid-range snapper that could go beyond basic shooting without adding pro-level complexity. In fact, it's still a perfectly solid DSLR even today, but in order to make the series relevant in the age of mirrorless cameras, Canon has built something more modern to fill its considerable shoes. That camera is the Canon EOS 90D, perhaps the last enthusiast-level DSLR the company will ever make. Launched alongside the Canon EOS M6 Mark II, the 90D plays the traditional strengths of DSLRs: good handling, long battery life, optical viewfinder, but adds some pretty cutting-edge specs. This includes a new sensor that brings a lot more megapixels than the 80D, 32.5MP compared to 24.2MP, which is helpful for cropping images, plus Canon's latest imaging engine. Like its predecessor, the new camera is user-friendly, with a price tag that's also pocket-friendly. It's on shelves for $1,199/£1,210/£1,959 Australian dollars, matching the launch price of the 80D in the US. This makes it a tempting all-rounder for ambitious beginners and experienced enthusiasts who need a camera that can handle a variety of shooting situations. At first glance, there's not much physical difference between the EOS 80D and its successor. The innards, however, are brand spanking new, with a 32.5MP APS-C CMOS sensor taking center stage. Historically, the sensor resolution of most APS-C cameras has topped out at about 24MP, meaning the 90D and the EOS M6 Mark II with the same sensor offers the highest resolution found in the crop sensor class of cameras. The advantage of having this kind of resolution means you'll be able to capture more details while giving you the flexibility to crop an image during post-processing, allowing you to zoom in closer to your subject without compromising image quality. While the higher resolution is a welcome boost, it can result in more noise in images shot at higher ISOs compared to cameras in the same sensor class but lower resolutions. This happens because individual pixels have to be shrunk to fit a higher number of them in a limited space. In short, with the 90D, Canon has proven that DSLRs aren't quite ready to kick the bucket yet, and as well as being one of the best DSLR cameras, it's also still one of the best Canon cameras available. Number 3. Canon EOS 5D Mark IV. The 5D Mark IV is also using the same latest generation sensor technology that we've seen in both the 1DX Mark II and 80D, with on-chip digital-to-analog conversion, which should deliver improved noise performance as well as broader dynamic range. That's not the whole story as far as image quality goes, though, with the arrival of dual-pixel RAW technology giving photographers the capacity to fine-tune the area of maximum sharpness. With each pixel made up of 2 photodiodes, it allows for the creation of a file which contains a pair of images with 2 very slightly different focus points. You can then open the file in Canon's Digital Photo Professional software and use image micro-adjustment to shift the focus ever so slightly, not massively, but Canon believes there's the potential to rescue some shots using this technology. As you'd expect, the file size increases dramatically, from 37 megabytes to 67 megabytes, and you will have to use Canon's rather clunky DPP software. The native sensitivity runs from ISO 100-32000 and is expandable to 50 to 100 and 2400. Impressive though this is, this expanded range is actually identical to the 5D Mark III's, although Canon reckons it has enhanced the noise processing algorithm for improved results at higher sensitivities, while it's also a stop more than one of this camera's closest competitors, the Nikon D810. The Canon EOS 5D Mark IV uses both a Digic 6 and a Digic 6 Plus processor, with the former used solely for metering, freeing up the Digic 6 Plus processor to handle everything else, including the 61-point AF system with 41 cross-type sensors, 5 of which are dual cross-type for even greater accuracy. The AF system is sensitive down to -3 EV, -4 EV in live view. That's darker than moonlight, so focusing shouldn't be an issue in poor light, while the fact that you can use lens/teleconverter combinations with a maximum aperture of f/8 and still have the luxury of all 61 AF points, 21 cross-type, will be a real draw for sports and wildlife photographers. The 5D Mark IV also inherits Canon's dual-pixel AF technology, meaning there are phase detection points on the imaging sensor itself, promising quicker AF acquisition than we saw in the 5D Mark III, and performance as speedy as in a lot of mirrorless cameras. Number 2. Nikon D780. The Nikon D780 is perhaps the best example yet of a DSLR reinventing itself for the mirrorless age. It's a very traditional-looking full-frame camera with an optical viewfinder, but underneath that old-school skin lies some of the same tech that you'll find in its cutting-edge Nikon Z6 cousin. In other words, it's something of a DSLR mirrorless hybrid. When Nikon and Canon finally relented and committed to their Z series and EOS are mirrorless systems, fans of optical viewfinders and generous battery lives were naturally worried that the days of new DSLRs were behind them. But the D780 proves that Nikon isn't abandoning the DSLR. In fact, if you have a stash of f-mount lenses or just prefer the way a DSLR handles, it might just be one of the best full-frame cameras the company has made so far. Designed to sit alongside rather than fully replace the older Nikon D750, this is Nikon's entry-level full-frame model, sitting below the D850 and offering something for those who don't need mega-high resolution, but who still want a good all-rounder. With Nikon suggesting that it will run its mirrorless and DSLR offerings in parallel to each other, it's possible that we might see other new DSLR models with mirrorless technology, for example, an equivalent to the APS-C Nikon Z50. But if it's full-frame shooting you're after, the D780 is a very compelling new option and is indeed one of the best DSLR cameras you can buy right now. If you've always preferred the spacious handling of a DSLR to their sometimes cramped mirrorless equivalents, then you'll be thrilled with the D780's chunky design. You get a sturdy, magnesium alloy body that's resistant to both dust and water, along with a satisfyingly chunky grip. The big range of dials and buttons also have lots of room to breathe. There's not a huge amount of difference between this and the D750, so if you're thinking of upgrading from the older model, you'll be very much at home here. The vast majority of shooting controls can be found on the right-hand side of the camera. These include the on/off switch, dials for altering shutter speed and aperture, and the I button for accessing a quick menu. You'll also see a top-plate LCD which gives you an at-a-glance view of several key settings, including ISO, aperture, shutter speed, and how many shots you've got left on your memory card. On the left-hand side, you'll find the mode dial, the drive mode dial, and a set of buttons which mostly relate to playback. Number 1. Nikon D850. The D810 retained the same 36.3 MP resolution as the groundbreaking Nikon D800/D800E. It was later eclipsed by both the 50.6 MP Canon EOS 5DS and 42.2 MP Sony Alpha A7R II. The D850, though, got an all-new 45.7MP full-frame back-illuminated sensor, BSI, which was a hefty increase in pixels over the D810 and only marginally behind the 5DS. Thanks to the light-collecting elements being closer to the surface of the sensor, the BSI design should deliver better low-light performance than previous sensors. Just as we've seen with the D810 and D800E, the D850 forgoes an anti-aliasing filter, which means even more detail can be eked out of the sensor, although there is the added risk of more patterning. On the occasions where you don't want or need to shoot at the D850's full resolution, there are two reduced size options, 25.6MP and 11.4MP, recording either RAW or JPEG files. We can certainly see this feature appealing to news and sports shooters who'll want to transmit images as quickly as possible to picture desks and might have otherwise passed up the D850 in favor of the 20.8MP Nikon D5. Another trick up the D850's sleeve is the camera's DX crop mode, in which the perimeter of the viewfinder is masked to provide a view equivalent to that of an APS-C format DSLR. The resolution drops, as you're only using a portion of the sensor, but thanks to the D850's huge resolution, you'll still be able to capture 19.4MP files. That's impressive stuff, and not far off the 20.9MP resolution of both the D500 or D7500. There's also a new 1:1 aspect ratio at 30.2MP. Compared to the D500 and, for that matter, the D5, the Nikon D850 has quite a modest ISO ceiling of 25,600, with a native base sensitivity of ISO 64. This is no surprise really when you consider how densely populated the sensor is, but there is an extended sensitivity range up to an ISO equivalent of 108,400, high 2, while landscape photographers will be happy to learn that the D850 also has a low 1 setting equivalent to ISO 32. The D850 sports a new 0.75x optical viewfinder. That's the largest magnification factor ever on an FX Nikon DSLR, and also a touch bigger than the 0.71x viewfinder on the 5DS. Unlike the D810, the D850 also features a tilt-angle, 3.2-inch 2,359,000 touchscreen. It's similar in spec to the one on the D500, but offers greater touch control, enabling you to navigate the menus as well as touch to focus, trigger the shutter, and review images.